I want to share a story with you today about a company I work with. Oh, it's probably over a decade, maybe longer ago now. And they had a problem. They had about 60 staff, I think. They had about 60 staff. And what they were doing is they were trying to find a way of getting faster IT support. At the time, and I was a bit more junior then, I didn't quite understand the problem, I couldn't articulate. What seemed to happen was that they'd had some in-house IT to do the junior stuff, then they needed more senior stuff, so they brought in a managed service provider, then the junior person left, and then they weren't happy with the managed service provider, so they got another one in. What was happening was they were cycling to try and find a solution to a problem. So they were trying to do it in-house and they were trying to outsource it, and they couldn't quite get to grips with what they needed. Now nowadays this is called COMIT, co-managed IT services. And there is a point where it makes sense to have somebody on site, probably not that small nowadays, but certainly when you're into the hundreds of people, you want to have somebody on site to deal with the basic computer stuff, setting up projectors, plugging in PCs, because it can get very expensive having a consultant come in to do that. It makes complete sense for me that you have that. And on the leadership side, you need to have your CIO, CTO, or in my case, the functional person. You need to have the leadership stuff as well. But in the middle, that kind of middle ground of dealing with technical issues, a lot of smaller businesses try and have that in-house. And it never really seems to work because you need to be using a managed service provider because they just don't have the experience. Whoever you hire, it's either going to be very expensive and they're going to be bored stupid, or they're not going to have the experience and the depth and width of knowledge, depth and breadth of knowledge that you need in order to make your business successful using technology. So what do we do instead? Well, I think we have to acknowledge the fact that there's more cost-effective and cheaper ways of doing stuff, and that's fine. But if you're a rapidly growing business, I would suggest that using a managed service provider will work out cheaper. And don't worry about the fact that you're paying for people on site. If you're very static and you're not growing very quickly, then I think it does make sense that you bring some of this stuff in-house because you know what your requirements look like and you can find those people. But I would probably bring in-house the junior person and leave the rest to managed service provider, and then maybe bring in some, with the managed service provider offers it, if not, bring in some kind of strategic technology leadership person at the top end if you don't have that in your leadership team already. So what was happening with this customer, going back to our problem, was they'd got very frustrated. They spent a lot of time looking at tickets, looking at support requests coming in, how quickly they're being resolved, how much time it was taking. Management time were very focused on this, and they thought that if they could find like the perfect provider who would be able to fix things instantly and always be available, who was very cheap. And you know about this, you can either have it quick, you can either have it cheap, or you can have it good. So the problem was that they were getting nowhere because they were trying to solve a very specific part of the problem, which was getting problems fixed quicker. Now, a much better way in my mind of going about solving the problem is to eliminate the problems in the first place. So if you've got a team of people and they're spending a lot of time on Outlook issues, find the root cause, eliminate the issues. It could be that they need user training, it could be that the machines are too slow, it could be there's a configuration error. And working with your managed service provider, however good or bad they are, they should be doing this stuff. The only reason to change, and most people don't change managed service providers by the way, the only good reason to change is if they're not technically competent enough to do what you need, or I suppose if they're too expensive. You could pay for like a top end managed service provider who are really, really good, really, really fast, but you're paying a premium for that. Maybe that's not what you need. You need to cut costs. So you've got to look at the next tier down. But I digress. The point with this company was they weren't doing any of those things. What they were doing is they were chopping and changing to try and find a solution to the problem. So this insourcing, outsourcing cycle where they thought, you know, we're better if we have somebody in-house because we can train them up, we can manage them. We better if we outsource it, it'll be cheaper and they know what they're doing better. Oh no, we better if we bring it in-house because it'll save us money. And the problem with this cycle is it does nothing to benefit the business. It just eats up management time. So if you're in a team where, as a leader, you're thinking about changing your IT provider or insourcing some of the work or outsourcing some of the work, before you do any of that, try and work out what is the problem that you're trying to solve. So are you using technology to grow the business? Is the technology stable and reliable? Are you sweating the assets? When you're in that situation where you're thinking about changing the way that you structure it, think very hard. Are you actually going to get any business benefits from doing this? Because change, while I'm a big fan of change and improvement, change can be quite expensive if it doesn't deliver what you need. So before you start swapping and changing things around, have a look at the holistic thing around what you're doing. Do we get the service that we need at the moment? Is it cost effective? it's not necessarily cheaper to spend less money. And you know this, like I was going on about, like, if you've got an 8-year-old computer that works perfectly, is it cheaper to replace it or keep it? But on paper, it's obviously cheaper to keep it. But actually, when you look at the whole picture of the people's time, amount of electricity it's using, etc., especially people's time, obviously, it's way cheaper by many orders of magnitude to buy a new computer than it is to keep the old one. But if you're not aware of that, then you're not making good decisions. So with my story about this company with their insourcing, outsourcing cycle, my advice to you is, in the long term, it's probably cheaper to outsource. But if you want to do it in-house, that's absolutely fine. But do remember that there's a bigger overhead for that, and you've got to manage that person. If you've got specialist needs that need somebody in-house, again, that's absolutely fine. I don't have a problem with it at all. It's quite a sensible idea. But do make sure that you're very clear with your RACI charts what that person's responsibility is, because sometimes I see as well, people have got 15 different jobs, they've got all these different hats, and it's very hard to do a good job if you don't know the big decisions that you need to make. So I hope that's useful. I know it's a bit rambly today, but I just want to get you thinking about, how do I structure my IT management team and the service delivery team to get the best possible results? Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments.